So my name is John Mlade. I'm with YR&G, which is a sustainability consulting firm. And what's a little bit unique is that we're able to work across scales, with manufacturers all the way through large master plans. And what we see is that, there's a lot of different questions asked from different groups within this chart of folks. And what's important to note here is that when we're researching, all of these solutions and the solutions needed to address each of these groups. Sorry. Oh, that's great. What's needed to address each of these groups varies in both time and in scale. And so, from large-scale urban planning, it's going to take a long time for cities to develop, and obviously it's very large scale, whereas on the micro side, green chemistry, green engineering, et cetera, we can have very rapid iterations, and so we should expect that research to go a lot more quickly. This informal research experiment was courtesy of the Chicago Public Schools. Like most schools, they're able to maintain all of their pavement in pretty good state, which is not at all. And you'll see all the gum and the dirt and everything, so it's clearly never been cleaned. But it really set up this great example to begin to, do this informal experimentation. The point here is that I think designers are all researchers at their core. And you will never sit down with an architect to design a building who's not researching different strategies, who's not trying to understand different available technologies, and who's not genuinely interested in making a high-performing, healthy building. I think everybody is on the same page with intent, or most are. And we've come quite a ways to reach that point, and there's still farther to go. Bringing that back, though, is how are we getting this information to them, and how are they asking their questions of the research community? We've working with a number of different firms, ranging from, the LEED V4 materials credits all the way through Living Building Challenge Red List and others. What we're finding is that this is not only a question of available information, but it radically changes the design process. No longer, when you're thinking about materials, and specifically at a very sophisticated level, can you design a building and then go back and find all the materials from which it will be built. Because you'll find that you won't be able to find a lot of the materials that you were originally counting on. And so what we're seeing with firm after firm is that we actually have to go in and identify the available materials palette before pencil even hits the paper. And designers are then able to look at all the materials that they can use. And again, a lot of firms are now moving to cleanse their libraries, so to speak, of all the toxic materials. But identify the materials that they can use and design the building from there. And, it's not an all or nothing proposition from the design side. Because we see, trying to implement the materials red list or some of this, if you want to remove toxicity all the way, is not practical for every project. Is there a halfway point? And so what we like to do, is talk to clients about, or talk to design teams about some basic principles that they can follow in design, from limiting the number of finishes, having multiple features or functions of any given material. But once you do that, there's a whole host of tools now available to designers to go ahead and start screening whatever materials they can. If it's not in the tool, don't worry about it. Utilize the resources at hand, purge whatever toxic materials that you can based on available information, and then move on. But that next step then, and I think was touched on earlier with this question of hazard versus exposure, right? I think the next step would be to address interior finishes that we're all exposed to, and then finally the worst in class offenders that you might find everywhere else. And the idea is not that, if we were to wait, and designers struggle from this, analysis paralysis, where there's so much information out there now, and it's so difficult to navigate it all, you end up not doing anything. But we want to continue to move that needle, and so following these very simple steps will help at least start designers moving in that question or in that direction, and help projects become more healthy, if not removing toxins altogether. But that applies also to the larger scale projects, just with different strategies. On some level, and this is Amory Levin's the CEO over at Rocky Mountain Institute. So I think many folks in this room have heard of him if you don't know him personally. But this is in reference to biomimicry, which is a book published just over 15 years ago now by Janine Benyus. And the idea is looking to nature for design solutions and design inspiration. Now we're hearing a lot about biophilia, which is kind of, biomimicry's first cousin, even a bit older, published in 1984, made popular in 1984. And, what I would like us to do is think about looking at the context from which we actually operate as biological beings. And when we look out to the environment, when we look to, quote, nature, we're very much part of it, but we no longer fit in. And I think the question, and that we all have, is that health will come to us if we operate within these principles and we really try to fit in again. And when we try to emulate the natural environment, look at all of the solutions that work there, we will find the most fitting solutions for our buildings and for all of our design applications. And so, a lot of the research has been done. We just need to look outside. And that's where this notion of translation, I believe, really comes in. We're both translating all of this wealth of biological information to design, and that researchers are doing that translating, and then also translating the research into practice. With those notes, I'm hoping we'll have some questions, and we'll carry on the discussion once Margaret shares some of her information.